Okay, good morning, everyone. Good morning, GPAR. This is Matt Braden here from the GPAR professional staff. Happy Monday, happy coffee talk. First day of the week, last day of the month. And we're right into September tomorrow, which is really hard to believe. But thanks for tuning in today. We have a great guest here with us, City Councilman Allan Domb, and GPAR member will be with us. He is going to go ahead and give us a little bit of insight about what's going to be happening with City Council. They're right on the cusp of starting back up in the summer, after the summer recess. But before we get into that, a number of things coming up in the pipeline. Hopefully everybody took care of their CE and renewal on Saturday. If not, we got a little bit of problems. We're going to have to figure some stuff out. But if you didn't take care of those responsibilities, you cannot legally practice real estate in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. So if you're in that situation, talk to your broker, reach out to the commission, and then if all else fails, reach out to us. It should be in that order. But hopefully you guys have taken care of what you've had to take care of. We had that extra time because remember the deadline was originally in May and then we got extended out until Saturday. We have some really great training workshops in the pipeline coming up in September. So keep an eye on your inbox and social media for those invitations. So we look forward to getting back into doing a few more Zooms. We have some coffee talks lined up with some really awesome guests for the fall. So we look forward to having all of you back in upcoming Mondays and joining us to have a cup of coffee and to talk about things that are important to our industry. So with that being said, let's welcome Stephanie. Raise your cup. And here we are, President Stephanie Biello.
Good morning, everyone, and good morning, Councilman Domb. How are you?
Good morning, Stephanie. Thank you. Doing okay.
Yeah, good. Well, thank you for joining us this morning. Today, we just wanted to have a chat with you, talk about 3 topics, really, and then maybe end it on some leadership in GPAR. Topics today, maybe we'll talk a little bit about city services, some legislation, and the outlook on Philadelphia. So let's start off with the city services. So what's been in the news a lot has been the homeless encampments that popped up in the spring, and they're still here today. The conditions are unhealthy. The neighborhood has concerns. So I guess my question to you, we'll start off with, how did it get to this point and how do you think this should have been handled by the city?
Well, thank you for having me, Stephanie and Matt and everyone on the GPAR call. I will say that it's easy to be a Monday morning quarterback, but we should have learned our lesson. And the lesson was that there were encampments, I don't know if you remember, on Vine Street between 18th and 17th. There were one tent went up, then 10 tents went up, then a whole bunch of tents went up. When the first tent goes up, it should be dealt with. It's like graffiti. If you allow graffiti to spread, it gets exponentially worse. So when the first tent went up, we should have taken care of the situation. At one point, we had 130 tents. And it's not like this administration was not working with the people there. They tried everything possible to give them housing, beds, hotel rooms. I mean, isn't a hotel room better than camping on the parkway? I mean, it's kind of unbelievable to me, all the services that the city has offered, still not acceptable. So most of these people, I don't believe were really homeless. I believe most of them were in a protest. And in my opinion, we should never have allowed it to get to that point. You can't believe the calls we're getting in my office from the residents of that neighborhood. There are people in Fairmont who are so disgusted they're moving out of the city. It's just not something we should allow. Now, clearly, the combination of the pandemic and all the other situations going on, we can say that those are added to the problem, but I still believe that when the first tent goes up, it should have been dealt with. And picture this, wherever you all live, picture one tent going up in front of your home, then all of a sudden 100 tents are on your block. I mean, you would not tolerate that. It's not acceptable. So I would say this, and a lot of the talk today is going to be around this topic, it's leadership. And the lack of leadership.
Yeah, I think, but the people who are in those encampments, a lot of it, and this is my next question about the mental health services in the city. And all the other services that deal with housing and homelessness. And I know that they've reached out and there hasn't been any progress there, or has there? And
There has been progress. Over 100 people
yeah,
we've been able to accommodate. That's pretty good.
that's good.
That's a good sign. And look, there's a lot of serious mental illness that is out there. There's also a lot of people that are just protesting that are out there. And so when we've, how many deadlines do we have? 2 or 3 already at this point. Now we have a judge saying that we're okay to move forward. It's going to be interesting how we're going to move forward. I mean, how do you exactly remove that encampment? That's not an easy problem to solve right now, because I'm sure everyone will be there with a cell phone recording whatever occurs. But this is like city property. It shouldn't have been, the first tent should not have been allowed. I mean, that's my position. It's public property. It's not for use of having people camp on the grounds of right next to the art museum.
Right. So that was my next question. You talked about the city providing housing in the hotels and everything. What are the solutions the city should employ for housing?
Well, look, I put forward several options. And one is, if people really want to live in tents, we have land in the city. We could build a campground with showers, food facilities, toilets. It costs $6,000 to $8,000, like a professional campground. But people may not want to go there. Some will. I think the long-term solution, first of all, is the tiny homes. But more importantly, I think I'm kind of shifting away from tiny homes and I'm looking at modular housing. I don't know if you noticed that at 4125 Chestnut Street, modular housing was built. It was a 6 or 7 story building at a cost of about $90,000 to $100,000 a unit. Now compare that. Clearly they're larger, but some of the townhomes that PHA is building are $418,000. So the modular housing to me is the way to go. You could probably accommodate 3 to 4 people versus what PHA is doing. And by the way, that project, for those of you in the real estate business, you should be paying attention to this one. I think it cost the developer $90,000 to $100,000 a unit. I just read in the paper a week or 2 ago that they sold it for an average of $250,000 a unit. So not a bad profit there. So I know we're all tuning into what's going on in the city, but this modular housing is something that everyone should really look at. It's a tremendous opportunity. Here's my dream, Stephanie. My dream is that we have a piece of land in the city and we actually build facilities for 300 homeless people. That is like a 6-month program where we house them. We provide food, medical care, psychological care, social help. And we also have job training. And you can sign up for this, providing within 6 months, we're going to find you a job and you're going to be out in the society working. So it's a 6-month program where we help you, you start working, we get you on track, we get you be a productive member of society, not just forever being homeless. And that's not for the whole population, because there's different degrees in the population. There's serious mental health issues, but there are a lot of people on the edge that program could help.
Yeah, that was my next question. I guess job creation and work. I mean, what is the role city plays in that?
Well, the 2 main roles the city needs to play right now is to provide safety and pick up trash and do the basic services. I like to say we're also involved in job creation, but no, they don't. There's 3 legs of any chair in the city of Philadelphia. One is safety, one is education, and one is economic opportunity. But without safety, you cannot have education and you cannot have economic opportunity. Safety is number 1. We still have businesses. We're on the phone with the North Broad Street corridor manager that still have not opened on North Broad Street near Einstein Hospital, because those business owners are still afraid to open their doors because of the potential of violence and looting. So we need to provide safety, number 1. You can't do anything in the city without safety. Now on the job front, clearly creating more jobs is key and building the economic base. You see what's happening in New York City right now, which is concerning. I think they just reported that 400,000 people have left New York City, mostly wealthier people, which is their tax-paying base. And to recapture those taxes is going to be very difficult for New York. We don't want that to happen in Philadelphia. It's taken us 20 to 25 years to build the base. So for number 1, we have to make sure we keep our existing, I'm going to say customers, because everyone in the city is a customer of the city of Philadelphia. We should make sure we keep our existing customers, residents, and taxpayers. And number 2, we need to figure out how we shift our economy. Our economy is too dependent on service jobs, and we got destroyed in this pandemic because of that. We need to shift it to more technology. And so, I am chairing a task force on the future economy of Philadelphia and job creation, so that's going to be one of the big points. But I think overall, we need to look what happened to those people who could work from home, technology-wise. They survived the pandemic. For service workers, they got destroyed. And so we need to figure out how we can help them. Basically, the economy of Philadelphia has moved dramatically away from the skill set of the residents, and we need to bring the skill set of the residents back.
I agree. So we're getting a lot of feedback. We love the 6-month program. So when that comes to flourish, you let us know what we can do to help out, and we will definitely support that. I like that idea. It's very cool. Okay, so keeping in line with city services, let's talk about the trash collection. So I think this week we're on schedule. Is that what I read? Did I read?
Yeah, supposedly. But I will say the trash collection is a combination of, this was an unusual situation. We probably didn't think it through as best we could. Think of all the office workers who worked in offices, okay, who had trash picked up by private commercial trash haulers. When we went from 100% occupancy in our offices down to 10 or 15%, the trash went down, the trash haulers' business went down, and it all became the city's responsibility. We didn't manage for that onload of trash. Everyone working from home right now has a ton more trash than they had when they were working in an office. And those office workers, by the way, the office buildings, they paid private trash haulers. What we should have done, again, in retrospect, is we should have managed that better. We should have added more either people or private trash haulers to accommodate it. We should never have gotten away from the schedule, but we should have done it sooner. It took us too long to react. We should have done it sooner. So that's on the trash collection. I think I go back to the basic services. When a city can't provide safety and trash collection and public school education, those are some of your main reasons why people want to be living in a city.
Yeah, so which brings me to my next topic, the homicide and violent crime numbers. They're dramatically up. I think today I read we're up to 300, so we're trailing Chicago. I guess my question is there any communication with City Council, DA, Police Commissioner, anything talking about how to address this violence in our city?
Well, I think there's a lot of conversation. We've had a lot of hearings on it. I know Councilman Kenyatta Johnson is chairing a committee on the violence that's going on. And, that's a very sad statistic that we're number 2 next to Chicago. That's not where we want to be. But clearly the community policing is important. I keep hearing about people in several neighborhoods know who's committing the crimes, but they're afraid to speak because they're afraid of retaliation, which is, I can understand that. We have to figure out a way where we can have community policing, where we engage with the residents, where they become our partners. You can't police in a vacuum. You need the community to work with the police. Otherwise, the police can't do it. I mean, what do we have? 6,700 police officers out of 1,560,000 residents. We need residents to help the police, the same way we need the police to help the residents. It needs to be that bond together. And I understand when Michael Nutter was mayor in 2008, they started a community policing and actually homicides went down. So I do think that's part of the answer. It's not the total answer. I think there's a whole disconnect in our justice system. Look, the police right now are demoralized. One captain told me there were 20 arrests and only 1 was prosecuted. So you have a breakdown between the district attorney's office, the police department, the U.S. Attorney's Office, maybe I don't believe there's any breakdown with Attorney General Josh Shapiro, but I had suggested before the pandemic started, that we have a sit down with all four in a room, no press, and say to them the following: you need to work together. Stop the politics. This is only hurting the residents of this city. Stop the politics. The Attorney General is probably the best person to lead it, Josh Shapiro. Get the U.S. Attorney on board, get the District Attorney on board, and the Police Commissioner. The Police Commissioner is willing to sit down and do that. She really wants to work with everyone and do a good job. So we need to get the other parties involved. All this politics only hurts the city. It doesn't help.
Right, and at the end of the day, it's the communities that are suffering. It's the people in those communities that are suffering. And I know firsthand, the community, there are police officers, they're good. They leave their homes and they go to another neighborhood to protect and serve and protect those people, and they appreciate it. So like you said, there's a disconnect, and if they could get the politics out of it and just go into the communities and ask the communities, what do you need? What do you want? And start there.
Right. Well, I do think there's also a need to build more trust in our Black communities. There is not a lot of trust there, and people are afraid to talk to the police. That's a real issue. When you know someone who committed a crime, but you're afraid to tell the police officer, how do you solve that problem?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, let's hope they all get together and they sit down and they can work together on trusting. Trust.
I think that tidal wave has to come from the population of the city. We have to fix that issue, because all this politics is not healthy.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, so let's talk about legislation. And much of the spring, the legislative agenda was put on hold. We were dealing with COVID, so now we're going back into session. Let's start out with talking about some of the committees that you talked a little bit about some of the committees, which ones you chair and which ones you sit on, and kind of how the process works.
Yeah, so I would say that I believe, in my opinion, most of what we should be doing in this legislative next session is dealing with the pandemic and the recovery of the economy. That is number one. And by the way, this past session, when council adjourned in June, we had probably 10 times more meetings than I've ever seen in any other past summer. We just continued through the summer. It really didn't stop. I was on 5 to 8 meetings a week for council on average. So there was a lot of, whether it was Zoom calls or meetings or hearings, there was a lot of activity that took place in the summer. But the committees that I sit on right now, or I will say the one that, was interesting, they gave me this session, the chair of the Fiscal Stability and Intergovernmental Committee, which when I first got it, I guess a year or so, more, year and a half ago, I said, well, actually it was like 9 months ago. I said, what am I going to do with that committee? But that's turning out to be one of the most important committees, because I now have the ability to question the administration on their spending habits, which is a great place for me to be, okay? Because as you all know, the budget went up in 4 years, $900 million. So that's one committee, and we've already had a meeting on that because we had some discrepancies between the Pew report and the administration's report. So we had hearings on that to try to clear that up. The other committees I sit on are Appropriations Committee, Commerce and Economic Development, Finance, Housing and Neighborhood Development, and Homeless Committee. And then also, I'm also put forth a resolution to chair this committee, a task force basically, on the future economy of Philadelphia and what that should look like. That has to do with, look, I've been saying this for 4 years. We need to change what we teach in our schools. We need to teach financial literacy pre-K to 12th grade. We need to teach technology, coding, and entrepreneurship pre-K to 12th grade. And that investment won't pay back in the next 2, 3, 4, 5 years, but it will pay back in 15 and 20 years, because it'll change the trajectory of the residents of this city. And then on top of that, we need to provide more workforce development for those residents 18 to 60 that are not skilled for this economy. And I say it's worth the investment, because if you don't do it, it's going to cost us a lot more money. I do believe a lot of the crime is occurring because of frustration. Some of it's due to the pandemic. I was out that Saturday night, was it May, the end of May in Center City, when the police car was turned over by City Hall, okay? And I got to see it firsthand because I went out in the streets at about 8 o'clock that night. You would have appreciated this. I was dressed in my city council hat and a District 18 police t-shirt that I was given by Jesse Harnett, remember the officer who was shot in West Philadelphia. And I had a 2-foot black flashlight with me. I walked up 18th Street, just past Devon Restaurant. You know where Devon Restaurant is on the square. I looked down and saw on Chancellor Street 16 firefighters fighting the fire that had just occurred in the 1700 block of Walnut Street. I went down there, spoke to the lieutenant, and said to him, look, instead of standing in the street with these hoses, come up to the 4th or 5th floor of the Penwark garage. We took out the fencing and they fought the fire and contained it to 3 stores. That would have spread to 1700 Walnut. It was a devastating fire. And then I actually walked the streets till about 2 a.m., actually chasing people out of stores, because I was like so upset. I've been doing this for 40 years. and put all my time and effort and heart into the city, I would go into stores. I went to maybe 7 or 8 stores where I took the flashlight and said, I'll leave the next word out. Get here, okay? And they left. They were not violent, okay? They left. What upset me the most was when I chased people out of Steve Madden in the 1700 block of Walnut Street, and I was in Five Below and the other stores. At 18th and Sansom, in front of Manhattan Bagel, there were 2 looters I just chased out of Steve Madden, holding bags of shoes, okay? And I said to the police officers at that point, you need to arrest them. I'm the witness. I saw them steal his garments, his shoes. And they said to me, we're not arresting tonight. We were told to stand down. That to me was like, are you kidding me? Like, how could we allow that to occur? That's just not acceptable to me. I don't know if I answered your question, Stephanie, but I'm so passionate about what went on that night and the destruction.
Yeah.
And I'm going to lead into something else. A week after that, we had 277 boarded up stores in Center City. I mean, it looked horrible. Last week, we're down to 41. And I thank the Center City District for all their efforts and work they've done here. By Labor Day, we'll be down to 10 to 15. That's amazing. So there's some really positive news. September 13th, over 75 restaurants have signed up for a restaurant week where they're going to have outdoor dining. And by the way, the outdoor dining was something my office and I did. We did 2 bills. One was for streeteries and one was for outdoor seating. And we now have over, I think, 300 applications that have been approved for outdoor dining, either on sidewalks or streets. And one of the caveats was that the city had to give approval within a 3 to 5 day period. So we cut through the red tape. And I know that's one of your questions on L&I. So I'm going to go right to that question. That question is, how can we make L&I, I guess, more efficient? We should zero base L&I, start from scratch, throw out everything we're doing and start from scratch. It is so antiquated. It takes so long. I'll give you one example. I was involved in a restaurant. I was a 50% partner in, it's not really Fishtown. I guess it's right below between Port Richmond and Fishtown. It's Gaul and Huntington. It was called the Pineville Inn. And I told my partner, don't call my office. Don't call me. I'm not helping you. You call the district council person. I don't want any involvement. It took him 1 year to go through the city's red tape to open the restaurant. 1 year. It closed 6 months later because of the economy. But I mean, there's an example of, 1 year, carrying the property 1 year. This guy couldn't get open. 1 year to open a restaurant. It's just unacceptable.
So talking about L&I, I mean, is it restructuring the whole thing? Have they changed anything? I mean, are they still doing the processes they've been doing for the past 20 years, 30 years, or have they changed anything? Because I know they went online to try to streamline. How is that working?
They have streamlined it. It's working better. I will say this, Commissioner Perry does a very good job.
Mm-hmm.
I believe he's going to be leaving. He's retiring. It's going to be a big hole to fill. He does a great job. But look, L&I overall was very antiquated. So I think that's one of the issues. By the way, after that Center City, I think it was Monday or Tuesday, I toured 52nd and Market, the whole business corridor there, and saw the devastation that occurred, and saw like an individual shop owner and had his 8-year-old son cleaning up the glass in this little convenience store. It was like heartbreaking. Then I toured Jeff Brown's 2 ShopRites, and I drove over to right below Erie Avenue on Germantown, where 1 block was totally devastated right off of Broad Street, right below Erie. And I was in Port Richmond, where the big box stores were attacked. And I went to South Philadelphia, and I actually went up to Germantown. So I tried to travel the whole city just to see what's going on. The devastation was everywhere.
Are there any departments, I guess this kind of goes into the budget, and I know we were talking about that before, like a few months ago, and we know it's in some trouble. So what do you think, what do you see in the future for the budget, and are there any departments that you're concerned about when we look at that budget?
I think the concern is like the Commerce Department, which is basically gutted. At a time like this, investment in the Commerce Department could be one of the best investments we make, because we're investing in the future of the city and the business and growth of the city. So that concerns me, because the Commerce Department was dramatically cut. And I also think that look, Governor Rendell Mayor John Street, Mayor Michael Nutter. They all invested in what I'm going to say, the tax system. What do I mean by that? They invested in lowering taxes to attract businesses to the city because they understood that by doing that, you're building the economic tax base of the city. We really have not invested in 4 years in the tax base. And one of the programs that I think we need to do to really send the right messaging and the right marketing, and we're working on these bills, and that is over the next 15 years, lower the wage tax from where it is today, about 3.7 or so, down to 2.75. Do it over 15 years, but send the messaging now. Send that word out. Lower the net income of the BERT tax from 6.3 to 3, and send that messaging now. The third is to increase for the exemption, small business exemption, from 100,000 to 250 for small businesses to exempt from the gross receipts. But what we need to do, we need to have a total attitude change. The best way is start off by answering our phones at City Hall. Thank you for calling the City of Philadelphia. How may we help you? Thank God business is here because they have choices in today's world. And we need to change the attitude of everyone who works in government and thank businesses that are here. You know, when Comcast did put up the services and put up the money with others to provide 35,000 households with internet service, I wrote an editorial to the Inquirer thanking them. Thank God they're here. You know, Comcast has 15,000 jobs. The economic job multiplier of Comcast is close to 4 to 1. That's producing over 60,000 other jobs. It's kind of amazing. I mean, you take Comcast out of Philadelphia, we got a problem. We really need 5 more Comcasts, and how do we attract them? So on the job front, we need to be, I think, more aggressive, especially now. And this is a crisis. And we have the wherewithal and the intestinal fortitude. It's an opportunity for us to change the direction of the city in a positive way.
So is that something you think could be implemented right away, or do you feel we need to address the businesses that are struggling right now because of the shutdown? Is there something we need to do now to get them to that level where they can function without losing sleep, you know?
I think we need to do it now. I mean, I plan on introducing this legislation in the fall. Now look, to reduce the wage tax from, let me give you the numbers, 3.7 to 2.75, that's about $550 million over 15 years. Remember, our budget is $5 billion, okay? To reduce the net income of the BERT taxes and to raise the exemption from 100 to 250, we might be talking 60 to 65 million, maybe $70 million a year, okay? Our budget is $5 billion. What am I talking about investing? 1.5%. And by the way, when I say investing, I actually believe by doing that, we will build our base and gain more taxes. So, you know, I know that I may be in the minority on council thinking this way, but my goal, I believe Councilwoman Maria Sanchez might be thinking this way also. I believe Councilman Mark Squilla might be thinking this way also. I think Councilman Derek Green might be. I think there are many more people that might be thinking along these lines because we need to build the base. If anything this pandemic has taught us is that you can't tax things that move. You have to tax things that are stable and build the base.
Right, and it creates jobs. We need jobs.
That's all. It's all about jobs.
Yeah. All right, very good. All right, so let's talk about the importance of advocacy and what GPAR, how our role could play with City Council with advocacy, I guess during COVID and moving forward in some of these initiatives that you're talking about.
Well, I will say this about GPAR. In the last 4.5 years, GPAR has, that I've seen, at least because I've had a front row seat, GPAR has been way more active than I've ever seen them. I mean, between Summer and Matt and you, Stephanie, and other past presidents, you've been at the table on every issue, and I have to commend all of you for that because you're really representing GPAR extremely well. And GPAR is like a voice that people will say to me, what does GPAR think? So that's a good place to be, by the way, when my colleagues start saying, what does GPAR think? That's very good. That means you have made a big impact. But I think the more GPAR can stay involved in helping small businesses, I think GPAR could play a great role in helping the small businesses in the neighborhoods Not really worried about some of the smaller neighborhoods where these shop owners have gotten destroyed in every sector of the city, whether it's 52nd and Market or on Germantown Avenue, or I was talking about on Germantown below Erie. I mean, it's unfortunate. Look, there's programs out there like the 30-day fund, which is helping people. That's $3,000. If we could get GPAR involved in the 30-day fund, that might be something we should talk about, because I know Jeff Bartos and Jeff Brown have given over, I think, 500 loans to small businesses in the city to help them get going and stay alive. GPAR should play a role in that. Maybe we could help with fundraising.
Sounds like a task force, Matt. Matt, he went silent. No, we'll get that started. We'll get a task force started. There he is. Very good. No, I like that. That sounds good. We'd be happy to help in any way we can. So, I guess my next question is, what do you anticipate from your colleagues this fall?
I mean, there's the possibility of more rent control potential. There's a possibility of more bills that are similar to that. But I really think that at the end of the day, this session should deal with economic recovery for everyone. Everyone. I mean, the city can't function. I know someone had a question. In the 08 to 10 period, financial period, the city's budget was short $100 million. This year it was $750 million. That gives you some level of impact of the difference. And a lot of this is tied to wage taxes and other taxes that the city will not get. So I think this whole session should be tied to, how do we bring this economy back? How do we bring it back for all residents? And how do we make it better? This is an opportunity. We cannot waste this opportunity. This is a tremendous opportunity for us to change the direction of the city in a more positive way.
Yeah, I agree. A couple of weeks ago, we had Kevin Gillen. He did a presentation for our members here and on the current state of the market and what it might look like in the future. So I think you were on that. I think I saw you on that presentation. So.
Was I? I love listening to Kevin Gillen. He's great.
He's great. He's wonderful. So what were your thoughts on his presentation on what he thought of the current market and where it might be going?
Right. So, I mean, I've shared my thoughts with Kevin, so I'll tell you what I've shared with him. I said, Kevin, right now, I wish I was a suburban realtor, okay? Because the suburbs are booming, okay? Full price offers, booming. Or if I can't be a suburban realtor, I wish I was a seashore realtor, because the seashore market is booming. It's like pandemic pricing down the shore. And Florida is booming, okay? Okay, if I can't be that, maybe I could be a townhouse, strictly townhouses in the city, or row homes, because they're doing pretty well, okay? The worst place to be is in multifamily high-rise, where people have to wear a mask to walk into the building, go by a doorman wearing a mask, walk into the elevator and question who else touched these buttons and how am I gonna press my floor, okay? Walk out of the elevator on their floor still wearing a mask, go into their home, take off their mask, then realize their trash has to be thrown away, put their mask back on and throw the trash away. As the example of that, I will share with you that in the Barclay, in January, there was one listing. I think today, when you look it up, it's gotta be 10 or 12 listings. 10 Rittenhouse had 2 listings, I think, before this. Now it looks like there's 10 or 12 listings. So what is happening? Here's what's happening, in my opinion. Baby boomers who moved into the city from the suburbs for the lifestyle, which lifestyle today doesn't exist, have fortunately other homes, whether in Florida, Jersey Shore, Poconos. And since March, they haven't been in the city and they've been at their other homes. And many of them have called and said, you know what? My spouse is compromised. I can't come back to the city. There's no lifestyle for me to come back to the city right now. Sell my property. That is going on. I'm not sure if other members are seeing that, but that is going on in the high rises specifically, okay? Now there's still sales, there's still some activity, but I do believe when you talk about the volume of high-end listings coming on the market, and those buildings in particular, that's an issue. And those are for the people who have choices. So I think overall, look, I think once we have a vaccine, things will come back to normal. But I understand it. If you have 3 or 2 homes and your wife's compromised and you can't go to a restaurant or you can't go shopping, you can't do anything, You got to wear a mask all the time. That's an issue for a lot of people. So I think we're losing that market. I think New York is losing that market on a bigger scale. Those are probably the bulk of those 400,000 people who've moved out. I don't want to lose them, though, because these people who are losing pay a lot of taxes. They pay a lot of real estate taxes. They spend money in the city. We need them. They're an important part of this base. You know, from the corner of 18th and Walnut, my office gets upset when I talk about this, but I'll tell you the facts. From the corner of 18th and Walnut, in a 10-block radius, let this sink in, 60% of the tax revenue of the city is generated. 60%, 10-block radius, which means we better protect that because we need those revenues to do all the other programs that occur in the city. We need that for the Northwest part, for the Northeast, or every section. We need those revenues. So I think it's right now we're in the eye of the storm. I think it's actually calming a bit. I think the fact that we'll be down at 10 boarded up properties after Labor Day. I think the fact that we have 70 plus restaurants open for Restaurant Week, that'll be a plus. We need to do more streeteries. I love seeing the outdoor seating. I think it's great. I think it should be permanent. I think we should make more and less dependent on cars and have more outdoor activities.
Yeah, I love the outdoor. I think it's great. So hopefully we can keep that going. So thank you for, I was going to ask you what your concerns are and what you were optimistic about, and it kind of like wrapped it all up there in that little talk. But I guess what is your advice to our members on this market? I mean, I see it as a very micro market. Every zip code has a different market. So what are your thoughts and your advice to our members?
Well, the biggest opportunity occurs in the worst calamity, okay? So for those people who have the foresight, okay, to buy in this market, in certain areas, again, as you said, Stephanie, by zip code. So because some zip codes seem like they're overinflated almost on the pricing. But in those that aren't, I think there's tremendous opportunity. Tremendous opportunity. So I think that this is, you know, I remember back in 08, 9, and 10, there was tremendous opportunity. This is just the way you look at it. Unfortunately, this pandemic, which I do believe will have a vaccine, hopefully next or sooner or whenever, and things will get more back to normal. I think this will look back and say, wow, I could have bought a property back then for this price. You know, something we haven't really talked about, which we should, is the commercial real estate, okay? And what's going on in commercial. And those are my colleagues who own CVS's and Walgreens and supermarkets. They're killing it because those are essential services. I mean, look at Five Below. They're going to put food in Five Below so they become an essential service. Those who are not essential, like restaurants and retail, they're hurting big time. I mean, 30 to 40% of those tenants might be paying their commercial rents. And then what do those landlords do? And, you know, we're running out. The end of September is basically the end of a 6-month forbearance. And if we don't get these businesses back on track, that's going to be a big problem. And then on top of that, in the commercial world, look at the businesses that have filed for bankruptcy. Unfortunately, I'm the landlord of Ann Taylor. They filed for bankruptcy. LPQ filed for bankruptcy. Intervision left. La Bus closed on Friday. Very sad. They had great food. I just hate to see them go. But there's a lot of bankruptcies going on across the city. There's going to be a lot of time and effort to fill those vacant stores, because how do you fill those stores in today's environment? So that's an issue.
Yeah, that's an issue. And I think it has been an issue for the bricks and mortar, for the retails also prior to this COVID. And I think the COVID was just kind of like the nail in the coffin. Right. So what are there programs the city can do to help? Is the PPP, is any of that, the CARES Act, is that helping these small businesses, not just the retail, but also the restaurants too?
I think the PPP kept businesses alive, okay? I think the key is to figure out a way that we can operate safely and open up more of the economy in a safe restart. We have to get the economy open more in a safe way. And that means more mask wearing or whatever we have to do in a safe way, we need to do. We need to open the economy more. You cannot, the city and the state and the country cannot survive on a closed economy. It just doesn't work.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't. So I'm really happy to see that the restaurants will be opening up their indoor dining and creating a little more, generating a little more income for them. So yeah, very happy for that. There is a problem, by the way, with the rules of the indoor dining. I'll just share this with everybody because everyone thinks it's going to be a bonanza.
But I'll give you the example. Right now, by the way, restaurants that are doing to-go or outdoor seating, most are averaging 10 to 40% of what they did last year. Now, the fast casuals like the Chick-fil-A's, they're killing it, or McDonald's, they're killing it. But take those away from the equation. I'm talking about the normal type restaurants. The problem with the 25% indoor dining, and we have to fix this, and it has to come from the governor, I believe, is that it includes counting employees. So I'll give you an example of a restaurant you may all know called The Park on Rittenhouse Square. They're allowed with this program now 10 tables in that size restaurant because of this 25%. 10 tables. It's kind of crazy. I mean, you could probably put 40 tables in there and still be 10 feet apart. So that has to be worked on, which is being done this week.
Good, good. All right, whatever we can do to help. Park's my favorite, so by the way. All right, so let's go on to leadership. And we have about 15 minutes left here. And I just wanted to talk about you and what you've done for our industry by giving back in such a profound way. You were 4-time past president of GPAR, and now you're in city council. So my question is, why? Why did you step up as a volunteer leader? Not just in city council, but also in GPAR too.
Well, you know, Stephanie, when I was in GPAR, I always said that GPAR is not just the voice for real estate, but it's the voice for the future of the city of Philadelphia. And so I do think that, you know, real estate doesn't work in a vacuum, as we've seen from this pandemic. Real estate needs good schools. Real estate needs a safe community. Real estate needs to take people out of poverty and help them, okay? We are part of the fabric of the whole city. And so one of my roles for doing that is because I felt it would help everyone. And, you know, I will say this to everyone on the call. Real estate people, realtors, are just like politicians. There's no difference. You enjoy helping people. That's why you do this. You love when you find the right home for someone and they love it. And I will say this, most of the people in politics love helping people too, and helping them through their problems, getting through their issues and solving issues. So for those on this call who are interested in going into politics, I think that transition will be very easy because you love what you're doing now. And it's very similar skill set. Maybe a little more frustrating in politics because it's a little slower to get the things done that you feel you want to get done. But I do think it's important. Look, without a healthy city of Philadelphia, what do we have? You don't have real estate. You don't have anything. So you need a healthy city. It's really number one in my mind. And that's one of the major reasons why I stepped up. When I was president, I saw that maybe there was a skill set the city could utilize by me being involved. And so that was one of the major reasons I ran.
Okay, so who has been your model of leadership during the pandemic? And this is not limited to the political world. It can be from anywhere.
Well, look, I can say on the business side of things, I think Comcast took a great leadership role with Brian Roberts donating all those notebooks early on. It's providing 35,000 families with internet service along with other William Penn Foundation and others. So I do think that's a great role. I think a great role model for me has always been Governor Rendell, even though he, you know, and in fact, last night you all get a kick out of this. Jay Lamont, many of you remember Jay Lamont. I organized a phone call for Jay. It was his 76th birthday. He hasn't been able to walk for 9 months. And look, at one time when he was a role model for me too. So we had a telephone conference call with over 20 people calling in, wishing him a happy birthday. Our president, Bill Festa, called in. Chris Artur called in. Governor Rendell called in, okay? Senator Vince Fumo called in. Michael Smerconish called in. It was kind of unbelievable. And I say that because there's a guy who touched so many lives throughout his life. Unfortunately, his health's not great today, but his mind is still good. He still remembered when Michael DiPaolo called in, the property address and the price he bought from him, 308 Catherine in like 1971 or something. It was kind of amazing. Wow. But I would say on leadership, look, I always thought that New York City under Michael Bloomberg did a pretty good job, okay? I will say that when we watched him on TV, that was awful, okay? Like really not good. But I thought New York thrived under his leadership. And I think there was a mayor, I'm trying to remember, of one of the towns in Texas, who I think is very good. So I think, look, leadership is really getting people who work with you and people you work for to do the things you need them to do and be positive about it and give them the credit. That's what leadership is. I mean, it's not, you can't accomplish anything as one person, but you got to get people together. And leadership, for example, is bringing together the district attorney, the U.S. attorney, the attorney general, and the police commissioner, and sitting them in a room and saying, no press, lock the door. We're going to figure this out for the benefit of the residents of the city. Stop the politics and get this done.
Great. I agree. Okay. So what has the pandemic taught you about governing in 2020?
That's a good question. You know, I think what it's taught me is the importance of technology, number one, because those people that were technologically oriented have survived through this pandemic. Those jobs that were technology oriented have survived through this pandemic. There's many people I know actually are working more hours, okay, in technology now than they did before because they were at home. Those people who are in the service industry are crushed. I mean, crushed. So the more we can transition people from the service industry as a city into other fields, the better we'll be. And it has also taught me that the school thing that I keep pushing, I won't be alive when this comes to fruition, probably 20 years from now, but it's so important for us to be one of the first cities to mandatory teach pre-K to 12th grade financial literacy, technology, coding, and entrepreneurship. That is a game changer, because in 5 or 10 years, when companies are looking at Philadelphia and they see that we're building a talent pool for a pipeline of potential jobs, that's going to make a difference in attracting companies here. So I think the pandemic really has been a lot about technology for me and the importance of it in all sections of the city and all residents. Now, I will say this, Stephanie, one of my most important goals is to take 100,000 people out of poverty in the next 5 years. We've been talking about it. I passed that wage tax bill, which actually probably should take 10 or 20,000 people out of poverty. The wage tax bill basically reimburses lower income people under $32,000 of the wage taxes. This was based on facts. The facts were that of the top 50 cities, this is embarrassing for us to hear, of the top 50 cities in the United States, Philadelphia taxed lower income people the highest, 18.1%. Every other city was 7 to 13 or 14. What was causing that? The wage tax. So by eliminating the wage tax for lower income people, average 140,000 people who are in poverty out of the 400,000 get refunds, checks. 60,000 households get checks. And I think 10 to 20,000 people who are on the edge when they receive a check of $800 to $1,200 will take them out of poverty. So more legislation directed to taking people out of poverty based on facts, I think would be something that I've learned from this pandemic.
Yeah, I like that. Hopefully you're still around when this comes to flourish. So that kind of goes to my next question about your volunteer leadership, and what are you most proud of?
What I'm most proud of, I would say the wage tax bill for me, like what I'm most proud of is helping those people who need our help the most. And those are people in poverty, and those are people who are struggling, and they just want a good life. They want safety, they want an opportunity. You know, when I go around and talk in all the neighborhoods, they want everything that everybody wants. They just want an opportunity. We have to provide that opportunity. I mean, that is key. And we also have to provide them with the hope that it can be accomplished. You know, I'm working on a school now. I may ask GPAR for their help. It's called Lambda School, and it's being done across the country. Basically, it teaches people technology. It's a great idea and a great program. So you could be a college grad, or you could be 25 or 30 years old. It's a 9-month program on the internet full-time, 9 months, costs $35,000. Here's the catch. You have two choices. You can write a check for $35,000, or you can say, I'll finance it, put $0 down, take a test to get in. It's a college. And so what they do is after the 9 months, they find you a job in tech. And the next 2 years, the income above $50,000 pays back your tuition. So it's like financing your college tuition or financing a career change through the job you're going to earn the money with, which is a tremendous concept for us to utilize in other areas. So we hope to be, my office is working on this now. We want to ramp this up and try to get 2,500 Philadelphians enrolled in this. And I know that may sound small, but this is, you got to start out at that level and build. But something like that to me could be a game changer for those 2,500 people.
Well, definitely let us know. Send us a link. We'll get the word out. We'll spread that word. Happy to do that. That's a great one.
We're going to count on all of you to help us get people enrolled and then talk to the tech companies to help them get jobs. The key is we need the tech companies to stand behind this so they'll hire people from Philadelphia. Okay.
We'll talk offline because I have somebody I want you to talk to about that. Okay, so last question before I close this out, and maybe we have time for some Q&A. So you've done a lot of volunteering, and you were once the chair of GPAR's RPAC committee. And why don't you tell our members here who might not be familiar with RPAC and how important it is for our realtor members?
Oh, I can. I mean, RPAC, the Realtors Political Action Committee, to me is key because you're endorsing, you're helping, you're promoting those people running for offices that are aligned with the best interests usually of the community. And so when I was involved in RPAC, I mean, it was helping get elected people that understood what was important for Philadelphia. And on the flip side of that, Stephanie, the RPAC in the last few elections for me personally was unbelievably helpful. Your local PAC, the state PAC, the national, I mean, you guys came through like unbelievable, like an amazing return for me on my small investment of RPAC dollars, the amount of support I received. And something else I should mention to you, I know Matt's on here, but Matt and Summer have been working with CLS recently to come up with a program that we can try to eliminate or cut down on the amount of predators, I'm going to call them, the wholesalers who are taking advantage of individual homeowners who are not knowledgeable about market values. Where they're buying, I'll buy your home for cash for $30,000 and then they flip it for $100,000. So Matt and Summer went to CLS to work together. There's an example, by the way, of working together to accomplish something really positive. So I want to end, I just want to mention that because I think that to me is unbelievable that GPAR and CLS working together for the benefit of the residents of the city.
Yeah, I agree. It's an issue, and they're doing a great job. I have to say, Matt and Summer they're amazing. They're great to work with. This year, working with them, their enthusiasm and their openness and taking the initiative has been just wonderful throughout this whole presidency for me. So, like I like to end every coffee talk with the magic wand. If you could wish for anything, although this whole conversation you've always talked about everything, your optimism and what you like to do for the city. But if you had one wish, what would that wish be for the city?
I'm going to give you two wishes. One, we have a vaccine today at 12 o'clock, okay? And two, I would say, to me, let's get the 100,000 people out of poverty. We have 10 or 20. We need to do that. That's just unacceptable to us to be a great city. We cannot be one of the largest, poorest cities in the country. That to me is our number one goal, helping those who need our help.
Great. Love that. All right. Well, Alan, thank you so much for joining us. You're always such a great coffee partner here. So with that, thanks again. And I'm going to turn that over to Matt.
Thank you.
Councilman, thank you very much for joining us today. I think we're going to have you a few more times before the end of the year on this coffee talk. It just seems like the situation kind of dictates that. So hopefully you'll oblige us with our invitation that we'll pass along to you. So hopefully we'll see you a few more times with that.
Yeah, and I want to mention, Matt, that besides you and Summer, Stephanie, you're doing a great job as president. And I see all the things you're doing, these coffee talks. I mean, you've been really engaged, which is so important right now for all the members of GPAR, that you reach out to them. I mean, it's just, you're doing a great job. I mean, on this call, you have over 100 people involved, which is, I think, amazing. And your advocacy for GPAR, your advocacy for the city, I've seen it. Your advocacy in City Hall, keep up the great work, doing a great job. Maybe you want to do 2 years, by the way.
Hold.
So I think it's really important to mention that the backbone of our professional team is Cheryl Adams, Donna LaPera, and Charlotte Corman. They are longtime professional staff with GPAR, and without them, we would be really, really hard for us to function. They do a lot of the stuff behind the scenes with helping folks out, particularly in this last run up with the renewals and CE stuff with the state. You know, Donna has been fielding so many of those issues and those problems and trying to help folks navigate through when they're really scared that their license renewal isn't going to get done in time. So, you know, Donna is an ace when it comes to that. You know, Cheryl, let's face it, when lots of activity is going on in the marketplace, there's lots of opportunity for people to not do things the right way as it relates to professional standards. And she's dealing with all those different headaches, and it hasn't stopped. The pandemic has not brought that stuff to a halt. It's constantly flowing on in, and Cheryl handles that with great level of professionalism. She knows how things go, and she's a great resource to folks. If they see something go sideways with a transaction, they can run it by her. She's not going to pass judgment, and she can give you options as to what your next steps could be. And then Charlotte, she keeps the bills getting paid. She keeps the lights on, even though we may not be home right now. We're really fortunate to have those three folks because they've been around a long time. They've seen it all. And when I don't know the answers to questions, they are the ace in the hole. So it's a total team effort. So it's professional staff working in conjunction with the board of directors and then our executive team. So we're really glad to have that kind of, we talk about partnership and working together. It really takes all of those folks to be pulling on the rope together. So look, we have 2 minutes.
Matt, I have a question.
Yeah.
Or a comment. Would you please, because I think it's phenomenal what you're doing, tell everyone on this call about the dogs that are being trained for veterans who've served our country and what they can do to help.
Okay, so there's a local-based nonprofit called Team Foster. Team Foster raises money that goes to service dogs. The service dogs are partnered with local veterans. The Veterans Administration does not pay for these dogs because they do not view the service dogs as a modality that helps out with re-entry back into civilian life. And we're talking about veterans who have post-traumatic stress disorder. We're talking about traumatic brain injury. You know, some of the wounds are very invisible and cannot be seen. It's really easy to see when someone maybe has lost a limb or some kind of physical limitation, but some of those other wounds are just as difficult, or if not more. And these service dogs save lives. So Team Foster, small nonprofit, they run a couple of different events throughout the year. In a couple of weeks, they're going to have the Foster 100. It's a 100-mile bike ride. They do puppies and patriots. They do some other stuff. So anyway, those monies are raised. They stay local. It costs $25,000 to raise a puppy to becoming a partnered service dog. And they're service dogs. They are not support dogs. They are dogs that actually help improve the quality of life and actually save lives. It could be getting a first responder to come to the house. It could be medication. It could be turning on a light switch, all sorts of things like that. So that's Team Foster. You go to teamfoster.org. Full disclosure, I'm involved with the charity in that I'm a cyclist and I help run that Foster 100 bike ride. So Councilman, thank you very much for pushing me to make a little pitch there. But
it's a great close.
So I just want to wrap up really quick with this. City budget, it's $5 billion. What was it when you started? And looking at the projections that the city is giving as it relates to taxable revenue, is that far off? Is that crazy? And then one last bit I will throw in there, where does that fit in with pensions and drop program and all that? That's a lot of loadedness right there, but it all intertwines.
Let me start off by saying when I started it was just over 4 billion. And now we're just under 5 billion. I think 4.9 is about a $900 billion increase. And I guess the real question every one of us should ask is, in the last 4.5 years, the $900 million, what did we get for that? What is the difference in city services? Like, what was the return on that investment? And it's hard for me to give any return on that because a lot of it went to labor negotiations. A lot of it went to hiring more people. A lot of it went to inefficiencies. I mean, what we really need to do is look at all the inefficiencies from the prison system that is still inefficient. And I just saw a report, they had $20 million of overtime, which blows my mind. I mean, The overtime is just not managed well. I think the number was close to $200 million in overtime we had. So there's a lot of inefficiency that's going on. You know, I said this to Rob DeBow, how do we control this? I would hire 3 or 4 CFOs from the outside. I would go to the big accounting firms and say to them, loan me 4 of your best people. And I'd have them go into every department and come back to me with a 10 or 15% savings that wouldn't affect services. No person in charge of a department is going to tell you how to cut overhead. Someone from the outside can go through it. So we're just not doing that. We're just not, you know, all of you on this call would never run your business the way the city of Philadelphia runs its business. I always say, you ever see the movie Dave with Charles Grodin, the movie Dave and Kevin Kline? It's a great movie.
Yeah.
There's an accountant in there. His name is Murray. Okay, that guy is the guy you need in City Hall looking at those books, because look at the prison population. I've said this 10 times. We had 9,000 people 8 or 9 years ago. Average cost $47,000 a prisoner. Today we're down to 3,800. Great, but why is the average cost $87,500 per prisoner? $87,500 per prisoner. Think what we spend on education. $87,500. Why do we have the same number of guards to guard half the population? I mean, that's just really eye-opening. And then on top of that, they had 20 million in overtime. So I think that there's basically across the board, it goes back to Stephanie's first question, leadership. There needs to be the intestinal fortitude to go in there and clean it up. And unfortunately, many people, not just in Philadelphia, across the country, are motivated by how do I get reelected versus how do I do the right job? And many people don't have a 10 or 20 year horizon. They have an election horizon, and that doesn't make for good government. So Matt, on your projections, we had PICA and we had the city. So far, the city's pretty accurate on their projections. A lot will depend on how many people start coming back to the city. We're gonna know more in the next 3 months, but we are monitoring this on a daily basis. We've asked for reports of spending of the administration on a monthly basis, which is something new. We never had that before. So we're going to be on this, and we're going to be very vocal about it. And GPAR should be connected to those hearings so you hear what's going on.
Okay. So I think on that note, we're over time right now. Thank you to all of our GPAR members for jumping on this. Great turnout today for a Monday morning. Hope everyone has a great and productive week and has a great Labor Day weekend. Look forward to having you guys on a future chat sometime soon. Councilman, thank you. Stephanie, thank you. And everybody have a great day. Take care.
Thanks. You too. Thank you for having me. Have a good weekend. Labor Day weekend.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Take care. See you, Stephanie.